Let's dive right into this explainer because today we're tackling a concept that can completely rewire how you look at your own life. We're exploring something I like to call the curriculum of failure. And the core premise we're going to unpack today, which is drawn from an absolutely incredible convergence of thinkers, is this: failure is not the opposite of growth. Actually, it's growth's most essential curriculum. To set the stage for us, listen to this deceptively simple quote. Anytime you feel good, you've found vibrational alignment with who you are. Now, I know, that sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But if you really sit with it, the implications are huge. Feeling genuinely, quietly good, and I don't mean distracted or artificially hyped up, but just truly at ease, is a sign of deep alignment. It means that feeling good is actually a powerful navigational instrument for your life. And, the flip side is just as crucial. Feeling anxious, reactive, or contracted? Well, that's a crystal clear signal that we've drifted off course. But here is where we have to violently pivot the narrative. What happens when the plans completely come apart? Because, let's be real, they almost always do. The inevitable antagonist of that quiet alignment is adversity. It's the failure, the sudden disruption, the unexpected humiliation that just knocks us totally off our center. And what we choose to do in those specific moments, literally the hours and days right after being knocked down, determines absolutely everything about our character and our recovery. To make sense of all this, we're going to follow a clear roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the cost of overreaction. Second, the yellow legal pad. Third, work as the container. Fourth, trusting the unfolding. And finally, number 5, growing through life. So let's start with section 1, the cost of overreaction. Whenever adversity strikes and our alignment is threatened, we all share this highly destructive instinct. It's that desperate, panicked urge to overreact and fix it right this second. To see what happens when we give in to that, we can look at author Robert Greene's impartial analysis of a major historical blunder. Back in 1971, the Pentagon Papers were published. Now, the publication itself wasn't actually a fatal threat to the administration, but Henry Kissinger reacted with what Greene describes as volcanic rage and strategic alarm. Because Kissinger lacked stillness in that critical moment, his alarm led directly to the formation of a covert unit known as the Plumbers. And, well, that frantic reaction led straight to the Watergate break-in and the eventual fall of the Nixon presidency. Greene's takeaway here is so sharp. The harder we frantically try to fix our mistakes, the worse we often make them. A manageable leak became a historic catastrophe, purely because of the reaction.
So what's the alternative to freaking out and overreacting? Robert Greene points us to an ancient, elegant law from the 17th century philosopher Baltasar Gracian. There is no revenge like oblivion. I just love that phrasing. This isn't about being weak or passive. It's actually a highly disciplined non-reaction. It's a deliberate act of will where you flat out decline to lend your energy to things outside your control. By refusing to be pulled out of your center, you literally let the provocation die of neglect. All right, moving right along to section 2, the yellow legal pad.
Now, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Sometimes a failure isn't just a minor leak. It's a genuine, undeniable collapse. You lose the job, the long-term relationship ends, the business goes completely under. In those heavy moments, disciplined non-reaction just isn't enough. You need radical self-examination. And what is so incredible to me is how brilliant minds converge on this exact method. We've got Robert Greene writing about stillness in politics. We have basketball coaching legend George Raveling writing about self-examination in sports. Classic authors like Leo Tolstoy and Montesquieu writing about work. And Coach Tony Dungy writing about trust and theology. These thinkers span across entirely different centuries and disciplines, and yet they all converge on the exact same methods for surviving a profound defeat. Let's zoom in on that self-examination piece. George Raveling profiled elite football coaches right after they were fired. Take Charlie Strong. After he was let go from the University of Texas, he isolated himself, picked up a simple yellow legal pad, and just started writing questions. What really happened? What could I have done better? Then you have Sean McDermott. After being let go from Buffalo, he didn't immediately rush to grab the next job. He built a strict new routine. He studied film for 6 to 8 hours a day, and even sought out a wrestling legend just to study sustained excellence. And Dan Quinn? He completely refused to be the victim and instead performed a massive, deep self-inventory. The absolutely crucial point here is that they didn't use their enforced stillness to wallow. They used it to aggressively examine themselves. They literally treated their failure as a curriculum.
Which brings us to section 3, work as the container. So stillness and reflection are great, right? But you still need something to actually do with your hours. This brings us to Leo Tolstoy's unfashionable truth. Deep reflection requires the structure of disciplined labor. Leaning on thinkers like Montesquieu and Thomas Carlyle, Tolstoy argued that idleness doesn't restore the human spirit, it actually dissolves it. Montesquieu famously said that constant idleness should be considered a torture of hell, not a joy of paradise. And Carlyle takes it even further, saying that work actively banishes the demons of despair. The argument across all this source material is clear. Non-excessive, structured work is a necessary condition for our spiritual health, especially when we're navigating a setback. To ground this lofty philosophy, we just have to look back at our coaches. Notice that Charlie Strong was physically writing. McDermott was doing disciplined intellectual labor by studying film. They weren't just sitting cross-legged meditating in an empty room hoping for answers. Their physical writing and study provided the necessary container for honest reflection. Work, when properly understood, isn't a distraction from the examined life. Work gives the examined life its shape. Let's transition to Section 4, Trusting the Unfolding. Here is where we elevate our explainer from practical day-to-day action to the incredibly liberating concept of letting go of specific outcomes. Coach Tony Dungy introduces a fascinating dimension here. He draws on the Apostle Paul's letter to the Corinthians and, famously, Garth Brooks' classic song Unanswered Prayers. The core idea? Our most confident plans often fail, and it's not because we're incompetent. It's because the universe's intelligence vastly exceeds our own planning capacity. What looks like a devastating failure from our very limited perspective might just be the unfolding of a much wiser design. Unanswered prayers is this mature recognition that the map we draw for ourselves is always smaller than the actual territory of life. And this is where the magic happens. It's all about surrender. But listen, true surrender is not fatalism. It is not giving up. It's the act of release of your tight grip on a very specific outcome. It means shedding an old identity, like, say, the coach who just lost his job at Texas, so that you can actually discover what comes next. You have to let go of the old story so that something better can emerge in the new space you've just created.
Which leads us to our final stage, Section 5, Growing Through Life.
Let's look at how enduring this whole curriculum fundamentally alters who we actually are. Eleanor Roosevelt gave us this brilliantly compact observation. I am who I am today because of the choices I made yesterday. Now, you could read that as some grim, deterministic absolute, but in the context of everything we've explored today, it is actually a deeply hopeful invitation. If yesterday's choices produce today's self, then the way you choose to respond to your difficulty today is actively, dynamically creating tomorrow's self.
This perfectly sets up a sharp contrast articulated by Eric Buttersworth. Two people can experience the exact same failure, right? One person simply goes through life. They survive it, they grit their teeth, they outlast it, and eventually they leave it behind. But the other person, they grow through life. They emerge on the other side with entirely new capacities, much deeper questions, and a profound self-understanding they never had before. The defining difference is entirely based on whether you are willing to treat the failure as a lesson rather than a permanent affliction. And that brings us full circle to the ultimate purpose of all this. The source material drops this wonderfully simple line: helping helps the helper as well as the person being helped. How does this fit into our curriculum? Because true vibrational alignment isn't just a private little achievement you keep to yourself. It radiates outward. The coach who emerges from failure with new insights goes on to serve his next players so much better. The person who survives the storm by doing the hard, disciplined work of self-examination becomes a calmer, wiser guide for others who are facing their own storms. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. Think about your own life for a second. What are you becoming capable of offering to the world for your own failures? The curriculum of failure isn't just about bouncing back for your own sake. It is actively preparing you to offer something entirely new and incredibly valuable to the people around you. Thank you so much for diving into this with me today, and I really hope this changes how you look at your very next setback.